Jack Riker was many things in his life. A decorated Navy SEAL, a widower, and most importantly, a single father. He had survived firefights in the Middle East, black ops in corners of the world no map dared to name, and the slow ache of loss when his wife passed away 5 years ago. Yet as he stood outside the polished glass doors of the Ashford Tech boardroom, he realized this battlefield was different. There were no rifles, no sandstorms, no camouflage nets. Instead, there was mahogany furniture, Italian suits, and corporate sharks ready to shred someone apart with contracts and legal jargon. But Jack's instincts told him one thing. The scent of an ambush was the same, whether in the desert or a downtown high-rise. And today, the target was Claire Donovan. Claire was the kind of woman who carried her brilliance like a quiet shield. She'd built Ashford Tech's most successful products, worked nights while others slept, and pushed innovation that had made the company billions. But she wasn't a player in Marcus Veyron's ruthless political games. That made her vulnerable. 2 nights ago, she had shown up at Jack's porch, her neat blazer crumpled, eyes red with worry. She had been the only person in his new civilian life who treated him like more than a war story. She'd looked after Ellie when Jack was late from the VA hospital. She baked casseroles she claimed were too much for one person, and always found excuses to drop by. And now she was in trouble. "They're setting me up, Jack," she whispered that night, holding a folder tight to her chest. "They rushed the product launch, ignored my warnings, and now they're pinning the failure on me. I'll lose everything." Jack had seen fear before. But beneath hers, he saw a fire too, the kind that made him decide without hesitation. "Then you won't go in alone." Now, standing behind her as she pushed open the boardroom doors, Jack's broad-shouldered frame in a tailored suit drew more than a few startled looks. He wasn't a Wall Street man, but he carried himself like a soldier still, back straight, eyes scanning, reading every twitch of body language. At the head of the glossy table sat Marcus Veyron, CEO of Ashford Tech, with his predatory smile and expensive cufflinks. Marcus had built his empire not on ideas, but on power plays. He liked control, and people like Claire, people with integrity, were obstacles to crush. "Claire," Marcus said smoothly, rising just enough to feign politeness. "Glad you could join us. Sit. We've got serious matters to discuss." Jack followed a step behind her, silent but steady. Marcus's gaze flicked to him with irritation. "And you are." "He's with me," Claire said firmly, though Jack could hear the tremor in her voice. "A bodyguard," Marcus sneered, chuckling to the board members who smirked along. Jack's jaw flexed. He didn't need to answer. Years in the teams had taught him the power of silence. It unsettled men more than threats. The meeting began with thin smiles and corporate phrases. Claire laid out her defense. Test data, email records, timestamps that proved she had objected to the rushed rollout. Her evidence was meticulous. Any fair review would clear her. But fairness wasn't Marcus's currency. "That's enough," he snapped suddenly, slamming his hand on the table. "You can hide behind spreadsheets all you want, but our stock dropped 14% this quarter. You were head of product. The responsibility is yours. The board has no choice but to consider your removal." Claire's face drained of color. Around the table, several members shifted uncomfortably but avoided her eyes. Marcus had already poisoned the well. His word carried weight, and fear of crossing him outweighed loyalty to truth. Jack's instincts roared. This was the kill zone, and Claire was boxed in. Time to change the terrain. He leaned forward, planting his palms firmly on the table. His voice was calm, measured, but sharp enough to cut steel. "Funny thing about failures," Jack said, eyes locked on Marcus. "They leave trails. And I've followed a lot of trails in my life. This one doesn't lead to Claire. It leads straight to you." The room went still. Marcus blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me, who are you two?" Jack's stare didn't waver. His voice dropped lower, steady as a sniper's breath. "I'm the guy who doesn't like ambushes. And that's exactly what this is. Hands off the lady, Marcus. Because if you push her, I'll push back." A murmur rippled across the table. Some board members leaned forward, curious now. Marcus's carefully crafted dominance wavered. Claire exhaled, her trembling hands still clutching her folder, but her eyes lifted to Jack's with something new, hope. For the first time that morning, she wasn't standing alone. Silence hung heavy in the boardroom after Jack's words. The air was charged, the kind of silence Jack remembered from combat patrols, when every soldier knew the enemy was near but hadn't yet revealed themselves. Marcus Veyron's smirk faltered, but only for a moment. He straightened his tie, masking his irritation with a thin smile. Bold words from whatever you are. But this is business, not the battlefield. Jack didn't move, his hands steady on the table. You're right, he said evenly. This is business, and in business, paper trails are just as dangerous as bullet trails. He turned to the board members, scanning each face. Claire has the records, the orders for early launch. They didn't come from her. They came from Marcus. Claire swallowed, then pushed the folder across the table. One of the older board members, a silver-haired woman named Eleanor Kane, opened it. Her sharp eyes scanned the highlighted emails and memos. Marcus, she said slowly, these directives, the timestamps, they all trace back to your office. A murmur rose around the table. Several executives leaned closer, whispering. Marcus's mask cracked. His smile vanished, replaced by a cold glare. This is absurd, forged, misinterpreted. She's desperate, and he jabbed a finger at Jack, is a thug trying to intimidate this board. Jack leaned in, voice still calm. If I wanted intimidation, Marcus, you'd know it. The words landed like a hammer. Marcus's face flushed. Jack shifted his weight, standing tall, towering over the seated executives. His presence filled the room, not with violence, but with certainty. The kind of certainty born from years of leading men through firefights and bringing them home alive. Claire found her voice. I warned you the system wasn't ready. I begged for more time. You ignored every warning because you wanted headlines before the quarter closed. She turned to the board. And now you want me to pay for his greed. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Eleanor Kane placed the folder firmly on the table. I've been on this board long enough to recognize a scapegoat when I see one. Marcus, you forced this launch. Another director, a heavy-set man with a gold watch, cleared his throat. If the evidence holds, this board cannot place blame on Ms. Donovan. Responsibility lies higher. The tide was turning. Jack could see it. Years of training had taught him to watch for shifts, the moment an enemy line began to crumble. Marcus, desperate now, slammed his hand on the table again. You fools. Without me, this company is nothing. You think she can run it. She's weak. She hides behind soldiers because she can't fight her own battles. Jack stepped forward, his voice like granite. You're wrong. She fights every day, with integrity. Something you've never had. Marcus laughed bitterly. And what are you, Riker? A washed-up SEAL playing babysitter. Jack's jaw tightened. He thought of Ellie, his daughter, his reason for leaving the teams. He thought of the promise he made to her mother, that he'd protect what mattered. He took a breath. I'm a father, he said quietly. Which means I know exactly what's worth fighting for. And I'll fight for her, he nodded to Claire, because she deserves better than cowards who stab people in the back. The room froze. Jack's words carried more weight than any spreadsheet or contract. Because truth, spoken with conviction, had a power no title could match. Claire's eyes glistened. She straightened her shoulders, no longer trembling. If standing up for what's right makes me weak in your eyes, Marcus, then I'll gladly be weak. But I'd rather be weak with honor than strong with corruption. Eleanor Kane closed the folder with a decisive snap. Motion to suspend Marcus Veyron pending investigation into misconduct. Hands rose around the table. One by one, board members voted, some reluctantly, some eagerly, but enough to seal the outcome. Marcus shot to his feet, livid. You'll regret this. All of you. His eyes burned at Claire. This isn't over. Jack stepped between them, his stance solid. It is. Hands off the lady, Marcus. Walk out, before you make this uglier than it already is. For a tense moment, Marcus looked ready to lunge. But Jack's steady gaze, calm, unshaken, utterly unafraid, broke him. Marcus grabbed his briefcase and stormed out, the glass doors slamming behind him. The boardroom exhaled as if a storm had passed. Eleanor Kane turned to Claire. You've got guts, Ms. Donovan. We'll need that in the months ahead. Consider this board's support behind you. Claire's shoulders sagged with relief. She glanced at Jack, a smile tugging through her tears. I couldn't have done it without you. Jack shrugged lightly. Didn't do much. Just stood where I was needed. But Claire shook her head. No, Jack, you did more than that. You reminded me I wasn't alone. Jack gave a small nod. He wasn't used to thanks. On the battlefield, victories were survival, nothing more. But this, helping Claire, protecting her, felt different. It felt like building, not just fighting. As they walked out of the boardroom together, Claire whispered, "You know, for a so-called consultant, you're pretty effective." Jack smirked. Comes with the job description. SEAL, Dad, part-time troublemaker. Claire laughed softly, the tension finally breaking. For the first time in days, hope flickered in her eyes. And as Jack held the door open for her, he realized something. Protecting Claire wasn't just about standing against Marcus. It was about standing with her, in whatever battles came next. Because some wars were worth fighting, and some people worth protecting, long after the battlefield was left behind.